Okay. I'm going to start with my introduction. Let me close out this. Okay. Welcome to this artist talk with Sepideh Dashti on the occasion of her exhibition Counterpoint that is opening this week in the Ruffin Gallery. It's actually already open, so feel free to go see it. This show is part of our new Ruffin Gallery proposal program that we began in 2021 to highlight work by emerging artists. Sepideh is an interdisciplinary artist who lives in Memphis, Tennessee. She got her MFA from Western University in London, Ontario, Canada in 2020. Sepideh earned her BFA in Fine Arts Studio Practice at the University of Waterloo in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. She is a recipient of various awards, such as the Lynn Holmes Memorial Award and the Curator's Choice Award during her BFA. She received the Joseph Armand Bombardier Canada Graduate Scholarship in Social and Humanities Research in 2019, and her work has been showcased nationally and internationally. Before we begin, I just wanted to say that Sepideh will be performing on our Instagram live stream from the gallery this Friday, and has asked our audience to share some thoughts that she'll use in the performance. I'm gonna pop, if I can figure this out, I'm gonna pop the link for that in the chat. And if you all wouldn't mind filling out the brief question on the form following the talk, it's anonymous. We greatly appreciate it. And we will also be taking a few questions at the end. And if you all wouldn't mind just putting that in the Q&A, we'd greatly appreciate that as well. Okay, let me pop that link in there. Hopefully everyone can see it. Okay, and without further ado, we can begin Sepideh's lecture. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you, Liza. Thank you so much. I'm humble and grateful for inviting me here. And I want to thank you, the committee, the Department of the Art at UVA considered my proposal and provided this opportunity for me. And I want to especially thank you to you, Liza and Eric, and thanks for all support and being patient with me. And I'm sure that this exhibition would not have been possible without you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Share screen. Good.
Yeah.
So first I start with a quote from one of my friends, and then I had to omit some of the sentence because it was very long, but try to go through most of it. I have a dream that I sometimes think about it very seriously, making a TV show that invites different guests to one of the topics in the field of women and body every week to examine each topic from different perspectives. Just maybe for a week, talking about our experiences from participating in school's physical education, playing volleyball with our long scarf and uniform. Next week, talk about the sign located inside women's pool with this warning: not to wear 2 pieces of swimming suit for Islamic decency. For another week, talking about the coffins of Behesh Zahra, which is the largest cemetery in Iran, where the authorities assign pink coffins to carry the bodies of women and blue coffins for men to avoid the exposure of female curvature to males. Now you're laughing, but they really assign time and budget for this. And for another week, talking about removing and censoring the photos of women from the funeral announcement, even the ones with hijab. The week after, talking about the women who want to enter the holy shrines. They have to wear another hijab under routine hijab. 1 year may be too short for just spending on hijab. I don't know how long it really takes. In short, we have a lot of work to do. What I read was the translation of Najmeh Wahidi's Wishes and Desire that she shared with her close friend on her Instagram account last month. I shared this with her permission. She is a feminist and women's rights activist, and she is sentenced to 7 years in prison by the decision of the Islamic Revolution Court of Tehran, with the charge of cooperating with the hostile US government against the Islamic Republic in matters relating to women and family. This dream speaks in relation to a particular cultural, historical, and political site. I remain in close dialogue with my homeland and strive to address critical issues that have been affecting me as a woman from Iran, even as I reside somewhere elsewhere. This includes my reflection concerning the social injustice and tyrannical politics of my homeland. In the quest to exit from the normativity of phallogocentric regime in my homeland, I speak as a woman, the feminine, think it, and represent it in my own term. Can you guess which one is me? Immigration is a, sorry.
No, I was gonna guess which one is you.
Immigration is a compelling subject to contemplate. Immigrants are often desire to find within their new homes the conditions of security and contentment. Led by the light of a hope to live in a better place, perhaps I would overcome the crippling sorrow owing to the loss of the nurturance of my family and the absence of sentimental belongings that I had left behind forever. In spite of the cost of my immigration, I gained privileges and benefits that stem from my daily experiences, moving between cultures, languages, and different configuration of social relations. I have come closer to the possibility of achieving critical insight into my position within the current power relations I have experienced. Karen Kaplan, a professor of American Studies at University of California, states, "We must leave home as it were, since our homes are often sites of racism, sexism, and other damaging social practices. Where we come to locate ourselves in terms of our specific histories and differences must be a place with room for what can be salvaged from the past and what can be made new." As an immigrant woman, I searched to find my new identity somewhere between the Iranian, Canadian, and American cultures. Why identity? Stuart Hall, a political activist, points out that identities are about questions of using the resources of history, language, and culture in the process of becoming rather than being. Not who we are or where we come from, so much as what we might become, how we might represent ourselves. I rethink identity construction by using my body, performing my body, and making objects relating to my body, and presenting through video, photographs, and installation. Why performance art? In defense of performance art, Gomez Pena argues that ultimate goal of performance is to decolonize our bodies, especially if we are from a minority group. And through this decolonization, we hope that the audience is inspired to do the same. Body, or the embodiment of the subject, is a key term in feminist struggle for the redefinition of subjectivity. It is to be understood as neither a biological nor a sociological category, but rather as a point of overlap between the physical, the symbolic, and the material social conditions. I did this performance at the University of Waterloo. It was a performance class, and we had to perform with a random object. I put the process and the development of my creative practice in 3 categories. The first one, I called it Andarum, inner space of the home, and normally identified as a feminized domestic space. Over and over, as a woman, I hear in the voice of tradition and religion that I could desire no greater destiny than to seek fulfillment as a wife and as a mother. Indeed, the iconic representations of women in contemporary era produce the function of reducing actual women politically and empirically to wives and mothers. Times and times I have asked myself this silent question: is this all? Working with the ideas of domesticity, identity formation, and the social and cultural construction of sexuality and gender inequality in private space, I intend to achieve into relevant issues. The way that social expectations, also political ideology, that assessing a domestic role for women restrict women from expressing and fulfilling their true identity. This text belongs to the previous image. I laser cut this text on a bandage. My mom, she's a nurse, and this piece is for her. In the Constitution of Iran, there are specific policies lead the society, also the family, participate in the discursive construction of maternal and domestic identity, and forcing women out of public spheres and encouraging to domestic life. As an immigrant woman, I still face many challenges and limited opportunities for renegotiating of the achievement of new identity. So I think there is a need to speak about domesticity issue. There is no matter you are a stay-at-home mother or working woman. The social expectations have asked you to believe in an ideology of intensive mothering and pacification through domesticity. Through such expectations, my sense of identity has control through the roles that I have been forced to internalize. My identity has been predicted upon certain predetermined roles, such as being a good housewife and a good mother. Talking about being a mother after my pregnancy with my second child, I'll focus more on the maternal body, as it has come to figure the claim that stress on caring and responsibility and the idea of biological essentialism that has historically grounded women's subordination. I posed my pregnant body, and then postpartum body shifts between being anxious and grotesque, also hopeful, as I consider it as a side of life. I explore paradoxes of my body and feelings. Like body as the threshold of existence is both sacred and solid, holy and hellish, attractive and repulsive, all powerful, and therefore impossible to live with. In my mothering series, I refer to the framework of performance with my body or without my body, video reproduction, and object-based artworks made by collecting objects like formula boxes and changing them, or creating words with my breast milk. These words I made them with my breast milk. I explore how the notion of abjection links the lived experiences of my body. My body is dirt as it is not in its proper place, and it upsets the order. The idea of abject arises from maternal body throughout breastfeeding. Considering this video, blame, I'm eating sugar paper contains list of food to increase my breast milk. I continued eating until the action of eating turned to the abject action of vomiting. I'm addressing Julia Kristeva quote with this performance. Since the food is not an other for me, who am only in their desire, I expel myself, I spit myself out. I abject myself with the same motion through which I claim to establish myself. Thinking about having no power of self-definition, I did live performance and talk about the maternal body with more complexity. As a licking, uncontrollable, sipping liquid, as a formless flow, entrapping, secreting, as lacking not so much or simply phallus, but self-containment, a formlessness that engulfs all form as disorder, that threatens all order. My breasted body as blurry, mush, indefinite, multiple, and without clear identity. In the last performance, I put a bag of milk between my legs, and when I wrote manifest, and when I read the manifest, the milk pour supposed to the ground, but it was school, and I made that box, it poured to the box. The next one is biruni, the public space. Andarun is a classic term for the house in Iran, and as I said, it is a space for women, and only close male family member like father, brother, or husband can access to Andarun. In contrast, biruni reserved only for men of the household and their guests. I extend the term of biruni to public spaces, and the works in this section are related to the position of female body and its experience in public space. Liza, can you? Thank you. This ironic work refers to the policy banned Iranian women from going to the soccer stadium since 1979, the revolution of Islamic Republic of Iran. The sound of the video is from the soccer game between Iran and Syria. Only Syrian women were allowed to enter the stadium, not Iranian women. Since 2017, White Wednesday campaign encouraged women to remove their headscarves on Wednesday as a sign of protest. I borrowed the name of this campaign for this video. Iran has morality police since 1979, and this agency enforces the regime's Islamic code conduct in public. Their focus is on ensuring observance of hijab mandatory rules requiring women to cover their hair and bodies and discouraging cosmetics. In the video, I perform my anxiety and fear while facing moral police. The sound of the video is from a video was taken by one of the citizens while a moral police was arresting a girl with not a proper hijab. Red tulip has become a symbol of martyr in Iran after Iraq-Iran's war. I made this work when an Iranian military officer beheaded by ISIS in a Syrian civil war. And the government of Iran used his will for the hijab propaganda. This is part of his will. Let not any namahram means your close male family member, get attracted to you with even a single strand of your hair. Let not the color of your face become the reason of attraction for others. Never neglect your hijab. Next section is in between. For me, in between space is very about the question of how the cycle of violence from homeland comes to global context and affect me as an individual immigrant. I quote Judith Butler with this section. In a way, we all live with this particular vulnerability, a vulnerability to the other that is part of our bodily life, a vulnerability to a sudden address from elsewhere that we cannot print. This vulnerability, however, becomes highly exacerbated under certain social and political conditions, especially those in which violence is a way of life and the means to secure self-defense are limited. In 2019, I moved to US in 2019, and this event happens several months before I moved to US. In 2019, peaceful series of nationwide civil protests caused by 50% to 200% increase in fuel prices were held. Eventually, the protests becoming the most violent and severe anti-government unrest since 1979. As many as 1,500 Iranian protesters were killed. I'm raising two questions with this performance. What is the price of being loud against violence? What is the price of becoming silent about things that matter? In this performance, I did two actions. First, I kept my mouth open with the bag of red liquid dangling from my teeth for 5 minutes, and then began to drink water from another bag while the red liquid dripping from the bottom of its bag. I continued the performance until the bag containing the red liquid was completely empty, and I could move my jaw easily. The amount of water I drank made me feel exhausted and nauseous at the end of the performance. By applying self-involved performance, I'm interested in how the performance art become an identity-making process, also how it highlights issue of gender social obstruction. I just reduced the speed of the performances for this talk. In doing so, I focus more on the traumatized female body, representing it in abject or grotesque states, sometimes evoking an agonized or melancholic state of mind. My work plays constantly with extreme exhaustion of my body that results from pushing the boundaries and limits of my physical self. Looking for emotional transformation from this sense of vulnerability and anxiety, I explore the corporeal grotesque as a bodily metaphor for the anatomical, extensively female body, and I see this grotesque as a positive and a powerful figuration of cultural feminist and womanhood. I'm interested in performing my body as fragmented and dispersed across space. I depict this fragmentation by focusing on performing a specific part of my body, such as my face, mouth, fingers, hair, or stomach for the camera. We have different places in society hierarchy. Underneath the traditionally coded body with an assigned place and role in the society. Underneath organs, there is a chaotic, messy world full of intensive potentiality. Quote this from Patricia Piston's Post-Human Glossary. The body without organs defines the social code and deliberately scrambles all the codes. Deleuze and Guattari invites us to make a body without organs, like see through your sinuses, see through your skin, breathe with your belly. In terms of using camera in my works, I connect my human organ with a technosphere. This is my strategy to invoke Iran's popular media, which is a cultural institution that reinforces traditional stereotype regarding women as passive. Alongside this is association of video and totalitarian mechanism of control and surveillance that must be confronted. Emilia Jones, an art historian, considers the technological rendering of the subject in video or photography as similar to a skin that envelopes the artist's corporeality. This skin indicates an interiority that leads to intersubjective engagement of body, metaphor, and with the cognitive and emotive aspects of the subject. This proposes that the flesh and the body of the artist ultimately connects to the body of the viewers. Hair and colors, especially black color, are core material in my performances. The materiality of my hair and colors, the materiality of my hair and the quality of the color black are the main elements to address the many familiar contemporary issues relating to my body and self. The issues such as compulsory hijab, the restriction and intensive control over women's body, the limits on freedoms of speech, and other powers exerted directly upon the body related to the regime's social, political, and economic oppression I have experienced.
Do you mind moving your cursor a little bit so we can, yeah, there you go. No, you're good.
By performing pain and presenting the wound in this video, my vote, I aim to create the potential of affecting the bodies of the audiences in a visceral manner to consider the constitution of the materiality of the body that physically shapes and thus determines my experience. I did this performance on presidential elections were held in Iran on June 18, 2021. Women in Iran deprived from their basic rights, such as choosing their own choice of clothes, forbidden from watching men's sport in stadium, and etc. I symbolized banning the presidential election by sewing hair on my index finger. The index finger is used for voting in Iran's election. Highlighting my background, performing vulnerability, and expressing anxiety work together in my art to speak to this oppression. This sense of vulnerability and anxiety is rooted in a way my sexuality and gender are intensively controlled by phallocentric culture. I have lost ownership over my own body and life, and I highlighted this theft of myself through my performances. I emphasize on mimetic repetition of the action of dominant codes and the codification of the cultures women live in at the level of female identity, subjectivity, and differences. This video, I depict the representation of my cultural image and personal experience. In the video performance, repeated action of applying lipstick, kissing my partner, and reapplying lipstick are presented. The video is cropped with extreme close-up of the mouth area of the performance, and this framing makes the performance anonymous. The framing creates the abstract form of action as it loses the initial meaning of intimacy, sexuality, and privacy. Instead, it opens up the idea of constant confrontation of the viewer with pornography. I'm using a metaphoric and reverse language mimesis to engage my viewer with an essential dialogue of empowering the marginal in order to respond to current overabundance of masculine power and growing phallicism in our world. To uncover the masculine phallocentric practice for the elimination of the female subject, I create fragment lines between oil, hair, and body. Resisting conventional representation, the signifier in the work avoid fixed meaning and create a multiplicity of interpretation. This video Zolf, I use hair to express my experience of marginalization, violence, and repression as a woman, as well to refer the policy of compulsory hijab in Iran. I juxtapose my hair with my self-portrait drowning in oil, petroleum, as an emblem of a tool of power. The video shows I'm devouring my hair, and there are several jump cuts to another sense that my head and face is gradually covered by the black liquid. Zolf, through its medium, content, and its title, Zolf means hair, and the video technology which grounds my identity in physical form, provides the possibility of representing different spheres of oppression in the making of my identity. This work in my thesis show was with the previous video Zolf, but for this show, I put it in a new context, and the photo at the bottom is part of the details of the new work. The text is from a traditional poet, Hafiz, who is still very famous in Iran. Don't let your hair with the wind blow, else to the wind caution I'll throw. This is about the transition between the languages that capable me having skepticism, thought about city identity and mother tongues. And this slipping between languages becomes as a side of symbolic exchange. So I changed the context with this text. I attempt to provide an examination of complex social, cultural, and political relations that have been occluded in the contemporary tension exists between my homeland and my host countries, with considering my individuality and vulnerability of my body and connecting it to others. First, this was the first time I used the word counterpoint, and it was a title for this video, and then I changed it. Counterpoint is the state of living with corporeal vulnerability. It is the preservation of difference and the development of multiple narrative by complicating the binary position of victim and aggressor to provide the possibilities for both empathy and solidarity. I made this work after the Ukraine airplane was shut down shortly after takeoff from Tehran airport by Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard. All 176 passengers and crew were killed. The shutdown occurred during the Gulf crisis, Persian Gulf crisis in 2019 until now, and 5 days after the United States assassinated a major general of Iran, and hours later, Iran retaliated by the launching ballistic missiles against US bases in Iraq. I used, for this video, I used melancholic mood as an art medium. And according to Adam Zirok, a professor of theater studies in Berlin, melancholic mood serves as resisting strategy against the totalitarian regimes. A few months ago, people in the south of Iran, whose life greatly affected by water bankrupting in Iran, protested peacefully, and again, several had been killed there by Iranian security forces. And the government shutdown of the internet in Khuzestan, located in the south of Iran. This video also, I performed mourning gesture and melancholic mood. Veil as a piece of clothes has become an ongoing negotiation for the liberation of my feminine body. The process of unveiling, veiling, and reveiling have become a complex question for me. Sometimes I lost where my particular experiences are from and where my practice can fit. And I think this is a time that the representation of this ambiguity is important and has the material effect to challenge this space of uncertainty. And finally, the representation become an individual expression. The distinction between a woman and a real woman is recognized through essential difference in the representation, a woman as a cultural imagery and experience, real woman as an agent of changes. In my recent body of works, I explore a cross-cutting connection between human organ, hair, and the non-human material, like grid pattern, fabric, bullet, tulips. No East, No West, made by a handwritten text on grid pattern shirt and a collection of my hairball covering my face. The grid pattern is from a fabric similar to chafiye or kafiye, which is the scarf that first donned by the Islamic revolutionaries to support Palestinian and resist westernization. Chafiye was then after known as symbolic, representing volunteer soldiers fighting in Iran-Iraq war. Thinking through layers of clothing and meaning, chafiye meaning and civilization can be seen as confusing. The scarf is still worn by the Basij militia, and Basij intensively engaged in ensuring the maintenance of assigned dress code, such as hijab and other standards for controlling women's bodies. Not just control women's body, but also men. Tangle. The repetition pattern of hair threading on the rectilinear shapes of grid pattern fabric called chaffier features a dialogue between my body and the patriarchal power structure of Islamic Republic of Iran. I allow the female hair find its new reception, new connection, and its new effect. The work enacts self as a site of exchange for the materiality of my body with other objects. The presentation of self is understood not to be about the insufficiency of my femininity, but rather it is the enactment of the complexity exists inside the mechanism of patriarchy. This one calls Gisu, and in our folklore, we have Gis Golabetun, which is similar to the story of Rapunzel in Western. And Gisu means long female hair in Persian. Red tulips also symbolize the martyr of the war between Iran and Iraq in 1980. Since the war finished in 1988, the government of Iran forced women to have hijab and cover their hair to respect the martyrs. As there is this idea that the men went to the battle of the war to protect the modesty of women. I believe that martyrs' memory should be treated with great respect. Instead, it becomes as a tool of the authorities to promote their ideology, and propaganda relates to controlling the bodies. And the last work I want to talk about is kakol, which means male front hair. This ironic photograph addresses the way that female head hair has become highly gendered in the context of Iranian patriarchy. However, hair in its physical form is sexless. Female head hair has become a symbol of sexuality. White tulips in this work symbolize the girl who protested against the compulsory hijab in Iran with her white scarf. She was arrested by the police on the spot of her protest. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry you can't hear the clapping of our audience, but I'll clap for everyone. We do have some time for a few questions. If anyone has any, you can submit that in the Q&A feature on Zoom at the end. And we'll take a second to see if anyone has any questions. In the meantime, like I said at the beginning, if you all wouldn't mind filling out the Google form that I put in the chat, that will help for Sepideh's performance that will be live streamed on Instagram on Friday. Okay, we have a question. This is from James. I have a question about the embroidery work. That word is hard for me. Could you please tell us a little more how you learned to sew and how it became a part of your practice?
It's just a self-taught process for me. Even my mom and my grandmother, she taught people how to sew and how do all this embroidery stuff. But I learned it by myself and just I did several performances with sewing action, and with this recent work, embroidery, my hair on a grid, I just experiment with different materials, and then I figure out how to sew it. It's just self-taught process for me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Oh, part of question is how it become part of your practice, because yeah, it's related to domestic life, right? And especially after pandemic. So it becomes, I think, a very convenient method for me to work as an art medium, because I don't have a studio. I work at home. So kind of, I can practice it at home. I think that's all, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That answers that question. That's great. Does anyone else have any more questions? We'll give it a second or two just to make sure. In the meantime, everyone should know that Sepideh's exhibition is open, like I said at the beginning of the talk, and you can visit it weekdays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And she will be around on Friday if anyone has additional questions after pondering the talk. It's seeming like we don't have any more questions. Oh, we've got one. Okay. What is your favorite medium or material to work with?
There are a lot of mediums I really like. I really like work with my hands and kind of something to be tactile. So thread, fabric, and recently hair. I have a huge collection of hair. Mm-hmm. And also I think I really like working with video and photography. And they are also very convenient for me. Use them at home in my private space.
Mm-hmm. We've got another one. If you feel like you've answered that question.
Yes.
Okay. Since performance in the body is such a part of your practice, the body as a site of struggle for multiple makers of identity, how do you think about sound when you perform? And is it incorporated into your documentation of performance?
Sometimes, yes. With the one, sometimes I have sound with my videos. The one with the blame, I ate sugar paper. It has like the sound that you have egg in your hand and just smash it. Mm-hmm. The sound is like this. And when I projected, it was very nice to hear the sound and watching the video. Also, sometimes I cannot just have the sound in my videos because I have a background sound. Like I did a lot of performances at my house and cannot really control the sound. So I just make it silent.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm giving you one more sort of second to see if anyone has any other things. I have a question. How did you initially start making performance work? Like what drew you to that? And are there any artists that you were looking to that kind of started your interest in performance? I'm just curious because a lot of, I feel like a lot of people don't initially go to performance, but that seems like, you know, that was something that you were really drawn to initially. So I'm wondering where that came from for you.
I think first I had one video course, and the first time I performed for the video, and the video was about censorship, and I just made the black liquid. It was my second year. I made the black liquids with cocoa powder and everything, like something edible. And I performed in front of a camera. That was the first time. And I asked my partner to pour the black liquid to cover my whole body and kind of blend to the black background. Mm-hmm. And I found it very satisfying for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a small workshop with my performance mentor, Boyana. That was the first time I experienced performance. It was kind of several short exercises. And before that, I really afraid to go and see the performance part. And then I think it was my third year in my undergrad that I decided to take a performance course, and I found it very satisfying for me to express myself. And yeah, that was the first time I did it. I find it in my performance class, I can say.
Yeah, because I guess I'm seeing a lot of like your current work as like almost documentations of a performance, even the ones that aren't, you know, an overt like performance on the surface. Like even the sewing of the hair feels like a performative act. So that kind of feels present in most of your work to me, which I think is great. And I've dabbled in performance too, and it's just like you're super vulnerable in it, and so I really admire that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, well, I think we can wrap things up. It seems like our questions are kind of all dealt with. But thank you so much for your time tonight, and I hope everyone is able to see the exhibition that's here. And if not, we have that performance coming up on Friday that's going to be live streamed on Instagram that I hope you all can watch. And yeah, hope everyone has a good night, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Liza. Thank you, everybody. Bye.